Wow, what a wild and crazy question that is. So I've written about lots of nonfiction, creativity, writing, all those kinds of things. Even though I read a lot of fiction, I don't think I would write fiction. I think I would want to go explore, like, are ETs real, and like, were crop circles really done with the whatever that was called, the guys that stepped and put down, and what are the Inca lines? And I probably want to go explore all that supernatural stuff.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have a very kind and generous person here on the podcast, another author who helps authors as well, and has a acting background, which I'm thrilled about. I'd love to touch on that a little bit. But Michelle is here on the podcast, and we're going to jump in and learn a lot and help a lot of authors today. So if you're an author, this is the perfect podcast episode to listen to. Michelle's going to help you today in your journey as an author. Michelle, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
David, you have dug deep if you found acting in my background.
See?
That's funny.
I love it. Our Souls at Night, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Can we just go a little side tangent?
Yeah.
Because I'd love to talk, because there's some really big names next to your name in this. Can you share just a little bit about that story? I would love to hear, please.
So I was cast as an extra, and it was pretty close to home, maybe 40 minutes away. So every morning I'd get up at ungodly hours, right, to go down there and wait. And they made me, so Jane Fonda, now, of course, my mind went blank. Robert Redford.
Yeah.
And another great guy. I want to say Robert Duvall, but we're all in the movie called Our Souls at Night. And I was cast. I went down super early, and they made me the cafe owner. And so I would wait on all these really big name actors, right? And I was told, no eye contact and that kind of stuff, but you just put the food down and you wait on them. And I did not have a speaking part. You go up in the ranks, even as an extra, if you get to just say good morning. But no, not allowed to say anything. And so I did that, and I went every day for like 2 weeks, tons of filming, lots of stuff. And then the movie came out, went straight to Netflix, great movie. And I had a big, viewing party with my family and everything. We all sat around. And the opening scene comes, and you can't see me. It's dark in the cafe, but you can see me flip the sign from closed to open right there in the opening scene. And I flipped the sign at the cafe, and then the opening scene, and then we go on with the movie. And I was cut out of all the rest of the movie, totally done. I'm the opening scene. You can't see me. I have no speaking words. And that is my big claim to fame acting debut.
Well, you can flip the sign for us here on the podcast from closed to open. We're going to start our podcast with that as our opening then. That's, see, you did it. You're the very first thing on camera. So there you go.
I am. And I've done little other small acting things in my very long life, but that's my big claim to fame.
I love the gigantic smile on your face as you recount your story. And that I can tell that's fun to talk about. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So
it's exciting.
The thing about authors, is we may not be writers, and I hope we're going to talk about that, but usually we're pretty creative. And so we have other outlets like acting or painting or crocheting or whatever it might be, right? We're usually creative beings.
Draw from many, many different resources, and it all shapes who you are as an author as well, right?
Right. That's exactly right.
And that's your special sauce as an author that no one can duplicate.
And it's your heart and your interest and your curiosity. And all of that comes into play, even if you're writing nonfiction. Like, people think, it's for fiction writers. But even nonfiction, all of that comes into play. Your stories, how you frame your words. It's your heart. It's your soul. It's what you want to say in the world.
It's amazing. Okay, so tell me more then, Michelle, about your beginnings as a writer. There had to be a point in time when writing was something new for you and you were kind of on that path of creating your role as an author and learning your way as an author. What was it like for you in the early days of your writing career, and how has it kind of morphed over the years for you?
So my very first experience writing was when I was 15, and I wrote a love story, which is totally appropriate for a 15-year-old girl, right? And I did that for a homework assignment, and I turned it in, and this is back in the days when you hand wrote everything, right? Handed the paper in, and my English teacher got up in front of the class and tore my assignment in half and said, "This is dribble."
What?
And that was probably not my first. I'd probably journaled and written other stories and whatnot, but that was, as you can tell, stuck with me, as those kinds of experiences stick with all of us. And I didn't really write again until I was 40. Some small things, but I didn't write my first book until I was 40. And I think that happens to a lot of writers. Here's what I noticed. First-time authors will share their work with their mother, their cousin, their best friend. And then those people will give feedback, thinking it's helpful. And it's never helpful. The only helpful feedback is from a professional editor, a reading group, someone who also writes, and only after you have a few calluses so that you can accept it as feedback and not criticism. Now, obviously, my writing teacher was pure criticism and uncalled for, and that still happens today, those kinds of things. I talk with so many people who want to be writers, and they just remember red ink all over their middle or high school or college work, right? And they were never taught how to take this as feedback and not criticism. And when we write, it's so personal to us. It's like, it's our heart and our soul, and it means something, and it's difficult. And we start sharing it with the world, that if someone says, "Oh no, that, you got spelling errors or that sentence structure's wrong," we close down.
Yeah.
And so the first thing is to understand that when you share your heart in any way, in acting, in painting, in writing, in vulnerability with your partner, in any way, you open yourself up. And so how do we do that as creative beings without taking every piece of feedback then that the world's going to give us as criticism and shut that down, right? So that's kind of the first step.
With everything that you know now and all the authors you've helped over the years pursue their journey as an author, what would have been helpful for 15-year-old Michelle in the hallway after class, having just had your paper ripped up in front of everyone, if you were able to walk up to her in the hallway with the knowledge you have now? Is there anything you would say to encourage her to continue, even though it felt like that was the end of that dream?
Wow, so much there. I think that's what I tell authors now. I don't know if you could tell a 15-year-old anything, but I would encourage all of us, and probably my 15-year-old self, to keep exploring the creative journey, that you have a whole lifetime to explore this, and you may not end up writing love stories, but don't stop, right? There are lots of ways to express yourself. I would give encouragement that you've got to just keep trying new things and keep writing, and it's hard to say, don't worry about this teacher who tore up your work. And it's hard with a brand new author, even with authors that work through my company and they get editing comments back. We try to hold our authors very, with a lot of love, right? And they still knowing that the editing's coming and go, "Oh, look at all these changes," right?
Right.
And And so until you go through it, you can speak all you want to somebody about it's okay. This is just polishing. It's okay. You can do it. But someone has to just kind of walk through that journey. And so what I say to anybody, including my 15-year-old self, is be resilient. Believe in yourself. Just keep going. Don't take it as criticism. Sometimes the world gives you feedback that you're going to take, and sometimes you're not going to take. Right? We've all had advice from old bosses or parents about what we should do with our lives, or our second cousin, third time removed, right? Well, how come you're not like going to law school or
Right.
whatever it is? And we all have to discern what's right for us.
Yeah. And our path is our path, and no one else has ever walked our path before. So no one's going to understand or see the world we do, so the way we do. So that's what I love about all of the creative process. And I, as a host of this podcast, I get to talk to great authors from around the world. And I hear so many inspiring stories of overcoming the rejection letters, overcoming, all of those things that happen as an author that they don't really necessarily plan for. And
Right.
I think that determination and that perseverance to keep writing when someone says no or tears up your paper, that takes a special type of person to keep moving forward when someone says no. So when you hear people wrestling with the no's and the rejections through your author journey, how else can we encourage them to keep moving forward?
Well, most of us, and I tend to work with people who are over 40, right?
Yeah.
Most of us have lived a life, and this is not like the worst thing that's ever happened to you. But so you got to put it in perspective, right? Most of us have had the highs and lows of life, death, divorce, marriage, birth,
Yeah.
betrayal, like so many things that just come along with life, that if you get a no for a rejection letter, it's like, put it in perspective, people, right? This is not like comparatively anything compared to what you've gone through in life. The difference is we take it so personally because it feels like it's a personal rejection. But even if you're an artist, or even if you work in corporate, we all go through lots of rejection in our life, right? We don't get the promotion, or we don't get the job, or whatever it is. And so the reason, as a writer, it just feels more personal. And so we have to separate ourselves a little bit. It becomes easier to know that there's a creative process, and we honor our own creative process. And then when we move it into the next stage of editing, we're out of the creative process. And then there's still a lot of creativity, but for the most part, it goes to a different stage. And so when you go to this new stage of editing and polishing, it takes a little practice, but then you can do a little bit of a separation with your heart, maybe brain switch, right? Code switching, whatever you want to do, and say, okay, now I'm just in editing stage. Let's take a hard look at this.
Yeah.
As business owners, we have to do that too, right? We birth our businesses with so much love. And then at some point, you got to get like pretty critical about what's going on and how do you manage it. So parenting, so many analogies.
Right. Relationships, dating, marriage, all of those things.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk more about theauthorpath.com, because I see it on the screen while we're recording here. Tell me more about, the path that you're offering to authors, and kind of what is it like to be a part of your community for those who haven't found you yet? I want them to find you. That's why you're here. But talk a little bit more about the Author Path.
Yeah, so I have 3 distinct sort of journeys. The first one is writing, where you just write, you get words on paper. And I'd like to talk for a minute about the difference between a writer and an author, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of people who want to be authors who are not writers. Lots of people who want to publish a book who are not writers. They write, but another analogy is you can sing karaoke and not be a singer.
True.
Right?
Right, yeah.
So you write in order to become an author, but you'll work probably more heavily with editors to polish that and make it good writing. There are writers who went to college for writing, who took journalism classes, who have been, journaling since they were 12, who write blogs. Like there are people who write every day. If they didn't write, they would feel unconnected with their soul, right?
Yeah.
Those people come into my community or any part of my communities and will write and just use the space to keep writing, be held accountable, get more words on paper, and move to the editing process. Then there are people who want to be authors who would never consider themselves a writer. Like they don't do that writing every day. They just have a message. They have an idea. They have an idea for a book. They want to write about their story, their memoir, their healing. Maybe they want to write a series of fiction books because it would be a really fun creative project. But they don't consider themselves a writer. They're not in it to learn the craft, to get better at the craft, but they do want to publish, right?
Right, yeah.
Maybe they have a business and they want to publish their book around their business, whatever it is. Those people, when they come into the community, I give encouragement, writing prompts. Here's how you can keep going when you're stuck. Here's how you outline a book. Here's what you might want to think about as you're developing your characters. Here's where you put stories in your book. So a little bit more structure for those people to help them become writers without having to make that leap from karaoke to professional singer.
Yeah.
Right? Right. So that's the first step. So in the writing journey, I get everybody to a first draft, probably a really bad first draft. Lots of words I could use about that, right? But it's just get words on paper in some kind of order. We'll help you figure out the order, maybe some kind of chapters, separation, but some kind of first draft. That might be 30,000 words, 50,000 words, 80,000 if it's a fiction book. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first step. People who want to be authors need more accountability, usually need writing time. We get together, we write together on Zoom. We have lots of encouragement. We talk about what stops us. We talk about writer's block. We talk about how to get bullet points so you can sit down and you can write for 15 minutes about one specific subject, right? I talk and help through all of those things. And that really helps people who don't consider themselves writers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe turn into writers, but maybe not. Maybe just publish one book, right?
Yeah.
Because lots of people want to publish a book because it's on their bucket list.
Yeah.
Right? The people who consider themselves writers just need accountability, word count, place to write with other writers, get some feedback.
I like how you distinguish between the two. Like it seems like people who are just writing for a project versus people who write for a lifestyle. It's not project-based or lifestyle-based. You got to have a sense of who those two different groups of people are because one way of writing doesn't work for everybody, right? So you kind of have to tailor it towards the education level and the comfort level of writing. There are two different levels. So you're trying to help both groups, which is great.
Yeah, and I tend to work with people more who wouldn't consider themselves writers because the people who consider themselves writers would come to me for the second part usually, which is, okay, I'm ready to publish. I have a first draft. Let's go to editing. Let's do developmental review. Let's get beta readers. Let's get feedback. All that second part, right? So I have a separate container for when you're ready to go through the whole publishing process. I like the way you talked about that lifestyle versus project. I also think people who wouldn't consider themselves writers tend sometimes to write better in large blocks of time because they're not quite focused, and I consider myself in this group, not quite focused enough because not practiced enough to sit down and write for 15 minutes and pump out a lot of words. Like, I had someone comment on a class I taught last week. Yeah, I sit down to write and I start looking at all the dirt in the floor, and it takes me a good 20 minutes before I can get past that, right? You're right. And so, and I like to say I sort soberware before I get to writing. And so for me and for many people who project write, I love that word. I'm gonna steal that. I need like 2 hours because it takes me a while to get back in the groove to focus because I'm out of practice now, right? Once you get in practice, you can sit down and you can write. And if you have time to sit down and write 15, 20 minutes every day, you'll get faster. Your brain will click in. You'll train it. You know, Stephen King talks about training the muse. Training the muse, you'll kick in. You'll be able to write. But if you're out of practice, you may find that you need 2 hours or a whole day or a weekend away at a cabin with no Wi-Fi or whatever it might be to get you into that space.
Okay, so I hear a lot of noise in authorship where you'll get an email in your inbox saying, you know, you can write a book in 2 hours and be published and be an Amazon bestseller guaranteed. And I'm like, wait a minute. That sounds like we're skipping the line a little bit. That sounds a little bit exaggerated, over-promising. Do you hear anything in the author community that makes you kind of go, based on my knowledge and based on my community and what I've seen in the author world, that just doesn't really seem to add up? And maybe it's a distraction for a new author that might slip into something that would actually make them go backwards instead of forwards. Is there anything we should be careful of?
Yeah, all of those things. So all of that's actually true. You can go write a book in 2 hours, get it on Amazon, hit bestseller. Here's what's wrong with that, though. It's not going to be a good book. You'll hit bestseller for about a minute on the Amazon, and then it'll sink in the rankings, and that's it. It's gone. You sold 10 books, 50 books, whatever it is, you're done. Because it won't be a good book, and it won't hold its own over the course of time. I talked with an author this morning who skipped copy editing because she thought she couldn't afford it. And then she got bad reviews. And so her book went from launching to getting some notoriety to doing pretty well. In the first week, got some bad reviews because she'd skipped editing. It sunk and it's done. And now I'm like, you have a choice to make. You got to pull the book down, re-edit it, relaunch, republish, or you just, take it down and move on, right? And so what you're talking about is skipping some steps that may feel really good in the short term. I want to say it's like taking drugs for weight loss, but I'll probably get hate mail. So I won't say that. So I didn't.
We didn't say that. Yeah.
But skipping steps doesn't usually work. Excuse me. Yeah. So you can become an Amazon bestseller, and I'm kind of known for pulling back the curtain and talking about what's really happening in publishing and Amazon bestseller and all of that. It does not take many book sales to become an Amazon bestseller, but you may only be a bestseller, like I said, for a minute or 10 minutes on Amazon, and then it's done. It has to do with algorithm and ranking and SEO and keywords and who else is publishing, and is Trump or Obama publishing that same day along with you or not? And did we break out in war that same day? Are people glued to the news, or are they looking for something to read? So many factors. Right?
Yeah.
So moving backwards, you can write a book quickly. Anybody can. Low content book. I'm telling you, it's going to be crap. It's not going to, can I say that?
Yeah.
And it's not going to stand the test of time. People also come to me. Yeah, I wrote the book in AI. And I ran it through AI. I ran it through one of these new programs out there to write my book on AI. And here's kind of the challenge. I think realistically, everyone's playing with AI right now. But you can tell You can tell when it's written by AI. So what AI is great for is give me some ideas of a subtitle or a chapter title.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take that and you make it your own. Give me some ideas around this character, what else I might add. But when AI writes it for you, you can tell. I've been playing with trying to get AI to understand my voice, and it just doesn't get my voice.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't. So a number of things here. When AI first hit, gosh, it's only been like 6 months ago or something, right?
Yeah.
A whole pile of books flooded Amazon. Then Amazon now has something that says, did you use AI? You have to disclose. And Amazon's getting very, very strict and has taken down a lot of those books.
Really?
And Amazon, if you've used so much using AI, you can't publish through Amazon. It's an AI book now. So you have to be careful. And people try to beat the system or game the system when they're doing those kinds of things and think they're going to make a ton of money, and it just doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
You can't really skip steps, and it doesn't help your creative process. It doesn't help your business. It doesn't help your bucket list for wanting to write a book, whatever it is that you're doing it for. So if you want to write a book quickly, my tip would be spend a day or a week or a month just mind dumping everything. Everything. Get it all out of your head on paper in any kind of order. When your mind is completely dry, then you go say, here are the 3 things I want in my book. This works really well for nonfiction. I want to talk about weight loss in my book. I'm going to talk about carbs. I'm going to talk about drugs. I'm going to talk about exercise. And then you say, exercise. I'm going to talk about walking or strength training or yoga, whatever it is, right? And then in yoga, I'm going to talk about Ashtanga yoga or Vasana or chair yoga, right? And you just break it down into bullet points, and then you spend 15 minutes and you write to each of those bullet points. Quick, easy, you'll write a book fast. Will it be the best work you've ever done in your life? Is it going to be War and Peace? Is it going to be epic? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a quick, easy book to pull together to help religion or help your business? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And good enough. And then you run it through an edit, be good enough.
Yeah.
Right? Not a huge creative project, but it's a fast, easy book to write. You can probably get 30,000 words out pretty easily. Makes for a great ebook, giveaway book.
Yeah. What I'm getting from you, Michelle, when you're talking is it sounds like everything goes back to the intention. Like, why are you writing this book? And if you're looking at it from the results side of writing the book, where, I want this book to make me money, then I think we need to back up a little bit, back to the intention to really, why is this book going to be in the world? Is it just a business card? That's okay. Then that's the intent. But is it going to change somebody's life? That's a different topic altogether. So go back to the beginning of the creation of your book and say, this is the reason why I'm showing up in the world, and this is why the world needs this book. So this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And if we have that clear intent at the beginning, I think that feeds us better at the results end. Would that make sense?
I love that. I have a workbook that I give away when I teach classes, and you're going to put all the links here so anyone that wants the workbook can go get the workbook for free. And at the very beginning, I say, what's the purpose of your book? What do you hope the book is going to do for you personally? What do you hope the book is going to do for your reader? Right? I take people through that whole process at the beginning. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's really important. And there's no right or wrong way.
Right. I think there's a little parallel between content creation and podcasting, which is what I do, and with an author, in that there are so many podcasts in the world. There are so many podcasts like this podcast. So why is this special? There are so many books in the world that are coming out every day, all the time, constantly, more and more and more books, like a flood. So who am I that anyone would ever listen to my podcast or read my book? And should I I don't even need to try. I'm going to give up at the beginning because I'm going to be in a sea of content. And who cares about what I have to say or what I'm going to write? How do you encourage somebody who's overwhelmed by just the sheer number of books that are pouring into the world at any given moment? What is some of the unique properties of an author that you like to pull out of them to show them that they matter and their voice matters in the world?
Well, yeah, I do a lot of purpose work just generally, not just with authors. And the first thing that we all just need to know in our hearts is we do matter. We're alive on the planet. We matter. We don't know the ripple effect we ever have with people. You don't know all the people that you're going to inspire with this podcast. You'll hear from some. There'll be many more you'll never hear from. And so the first thing is somehow take it into your heart that you matter, you're on purpose, you're here, like life is full, right? Then if you have some kind of nudge that says, I want to write a book someday, or I have this great idea for a book, or I really want to write this book, I wish I could write this book, then you have to take that and just start the process without worrying about the end result. If you're worried about editing before you've started, if you're worried about publishing before you've started, if you're worried about the overwhelm of how do I structure this book before you ever write a paragraph, that overwhelm of the end result will stop you in your tracks. If I want to go hike Mount Everest and I can barely walk 3 miles right now, I'm never going to even start, right? So you just start where you are and don't worry about it. There's lots of help and support to get you to that end goal. But the first thing is you have to give yourself permission to let go of the end result. In our do society in the Western, Canada, the US for sure, Canada a little bit, and Western culture, we're all about do, and the end result. And any creative project, you have to let that go a little bit because there's a magic that happens when you're in the creativity of things that come out of you that you would never expect. You can call it divine inspiration. You can call it intuition. You can call it creativity. I think it's all of those things. Right. That when you let go of the do and allow yourself to express, the magic happens, and that will help you get over the overwhelm, and that helps give you some inner knowing that, yes, you can do this, that, yes, I'm on the right path, some excitement that, this is kind of fun. And so I think all artists, creatives, business owners struggle with that, letting go of the end result. At some point, you got to pull that in.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, right? At some point, you have to think about your reader. You have to think about why you're doing this. So it's like with everything in life, there's this polarity, right? You have to hold both at the same time. You have to keep your reader in mind and let go of it.
Yeah.
So start with yourself in your creative process, and we're going to pull that back in a little bit later.
Yeah. And the one thing I see too is like encouragement for authors, especially new authors, just to start writing, just get in the habit of writing and, find your voice. It'll take a little while to do that. It's not just going to come naturally to everyone. You're going to have to spend some time doing that. And I mentioned to someone that if you compare that to being a bungee jumper, which I've never done, so I'm not speaking out of experience, strapping elastics on my legs and jumping does not entice me at all. But you can study bungee jumping. You can read books about bungee jumping. You can be an expert and get on stage and talk about bungee jumping, but you will never be a bungee jumper until you actually jump. So
that's right.
As an author, you can talk about it. You can learn. You can get all these great resources, study. But until you start writing, you're not a writer. You're not an author. You're not on the journey yet. So you got to get on the path and just start the process. And I think that's part of the things we wanted to encourage with the podcast is that if you're struggling getting yourself going and motivated, working with someone like you or being part of community, I think is a big bonus to that. What other parts of community you think benefit an author instead of just being on their own, a little island as an author, separated from the world, trying to do everything themselves? What are some of the benefits of writing in community that you think?
Well, for sure, knowing that other people, you can hear other people go, I only got 100 words down in the whole hour I wrote today, right? It's like you're not alone. Yeah. And then when that same person comes back and says, wow, I wrote 750 words in this hour, you can see that everybody goes through this, right? So that's helpful. When you get to editing stage, it's really helpful to know that other people are going through this internal up-leveling, polishing your words, right? And that it's just editing. It's not any personal. It's not changing your voice. It's not changing the meaning of your story. It's just polishing it, making it better. All of those things are helpful. And I think always to be in community is better. Even if you're introverted, even if you don't show up to everything, just having the feeling of knowing someone's got your back and your best interests at heart is always supportive, especially with all the noise and craziness out there in the world right now.
Another thing I hear from authors is they wrestle a little bit with promotion around their book, getting it out into the world, but then as well, how long to promote a certain book as they continue writing and they produce new works in the future. Like, when do you stop talking about book 1 and you're on book 3? Like, how is there like a time span that you'd kind of give us a guideline for us as far as being on podcasts or being on social media and promoting a book that's in our past library? When do we start moving forward with our next thing?
So I think it's a little bit different depending on the genre. So like with fiction books, you want to make that first book as good as you possibly can and make sure it leads to the second and the third book. And then you never stop promoting the first book, because fiction readers like to start in the first book. I mean, I do that. I read series. I'm a series fiction reader, like mystery novels, right? And there's lots of us out there. We start with the first book. If we like the first book, we'll read the whole series, right? And so you can't say really as fiction, oh, this first one's good enough, the next one will be better. Well, yes, the next one will be better because it's always better. And you got to make that first one as good as you possibly can, because you got to engage those like me to read the first one, because I'm not going to start on the third one. I'm going to start on the first one. So, and then you always promote that first one because it will lead to someone reading the whole series.
That's smart.
Nonfiction's a little different. Nonfiction's a little different. If you have written, let's say we have a lot of authors who write a book, then write a workbook to go along with it, and then write like the course or the follow-up book or something like that on fiction. That's a little different. You may go back and refer to the first book quite a bit, but you want to promote, I think, usually the latest book, while mentioning you also have other books, because probably your third book will be a lot better. Right. And it'll be more timely. It's nonfiction. It'll be more relevant to what your audience needs right now. But every book is a little different. And I like to talk with the author, find out their goals, their dreams. Maybe the first book isn't just a lead gen, and the third book actually takes people through a specific way of doing something, right? So it may be someone needs to buy all 3 books. To go through your content, right? So everyone's a little different, but we relaunch books, and I work with authors to relaunch books after they've been out a year, 2 years. Nonfiction books can have a long tail, as they say.
Okay, so we're wrapping up here in a few minutes, and what I'd like to do is I want to turn the podcast, Michelle, over to you. I'm going to back into the audience now and listen in intently to you. But I would love for you to address the authors that are listening right now that have been with us all the way through this conversation, which has been great, by the way. I love this. But they're here. They're looking for inspiration from you and all of the knowledge and all of the great tools that you have at your disposal to help authors. I'd love for you to promote what you do as well, please. But can you just kind of help us kind of wrap all this up in a nice little bow for the authors listening on maybe some of the things we haven't touched on that are really super important to you, that we could really kind of bring all this together to benefit an author that's listening? Can I just give you the podcast now? Can you kind of lead us through this?
Yeah. And I'll just talk and you interrupt me when I have to stop. So, I see it as 3 distinct areas: writing to first draft, then publishing, and ongoing marketing. It is three distinct areas. And you do have to, at some point while you're writing, think about marketing. Start thinking about, are you going to go out there, promote? Do you want to get on podcasts? Do you want to write blog articles? How are you going to do review tours? You need to start thinking about that without going into overwhelm. And then when you're in publishing, don't skip steps. Like editing is crucial. Having a cover is crucial. One of the things that we haven't talked about at all is when you're a writer, look up your genre on Amazon, preferably on your phone, and start scrolling through books. And certain covers will pop out at you. And you will notice that 90% of the covers don't. And so you have to really hit the cover, because someone who's just scrolling through a genre like murder mysteries or how do I build my business in 90 days, they're going to start by looking at that visual cover on their phone, and they're just scrolling. So your cover has to be spot on and, this big little icon on the phone. And I share these things not for anyone to go into overwhelm, but to know there are all kinds of ways to get support on that. We test covers. We will we have a team that is like super intuitive about covers. We will make sure that you get a great cover. And once in a while, not very often, but once in a while, we'll play with two different covers. We'll test, publish two different covers. Sometimes you'll get a different cover in a different country, right? So covers are super important. And editing, super important. Layout and design. Once you get a book and you're holding a paperback book, you got to make sure that it's readable. The font's not too small or it's not too big and it's annoying, like it's comfortable. That when you're on an ebook that you can scroll and the images go with it. If there's images and the image doesn't get stuck half on one page and half on the next, right? All those kinds of details that happen in publishing. And then the third part is the marketing. And you start marketing at the beginning, but really you do a big push when you're toward publishing. And for most people who just have one or two books, the marketing comes after it's published. Reviews. Yeah. You got to get reviews. And that's the hardest thing to do. We do review tours. We actually have people on our list that review books for us. So if you love to read, sign up.
Nice.
We give you free books to review.
Good.
So that's the other piece, come be one of our reviewers and leave reviews on Goodreads or Amazon. You got to get 5 reviews. We don't even start Amazon ads until you get 10 reviews. And then, if you get 50 reviews and 100 reviews and 500 reviews, there's like some benchmarks. Without 5 reviews, you got to go get 5 reviews.
Yeah.
You must. That's kind of the very minimum. I talk with authors all the time. I got 3 great reviews. That's fantastic. And I'll go get some more, right? There's a lot of ways to do that. And I think as with everything, so I painted for a while. It's been a couple decades ago. I painted for a while. And then I did the thing I'm going to go submit to art galleries and I won some awards and I thought, this is super fun. And then I realized I had to learn about matting, framing, and am I going to do it myself or am I going to take it somewhere? And how am I going to, and I have to learn pricing by the square inch. Who knew that artists price per square inch? And then how much does a gallery take? Yeah. And am I going to go do farmers markets and sell the work myself? And I'm I'm done. I just want to paint for a hobby.
Yeah.
I'm so done. So writing and publishing is the same thing. Do you just want to write for you? Self-publish something, you're done? Or do you want to learn or work with a publisher like myself to go through all these pieces and nail it, right? So I did end up working with an art gallery and I just turned it over and they handled the whole thing and they took a larger percentage and I was fine.
Yeah.
Right? I was lucky to find somebody like that. Eventually I said, I'm done. But as authors, we have to make those decisions
Right.
as well. Are we going to work with someone who's going to take us through all of these pieces? Because you don't really realize you got to figure out the spine width. You got to understand margins and gutters. You have to understand indexes and page numbers and like all those details, right? That most of us don't think about until we're in the middle of it. So don't go in overwhelm. Get the help and support you need at every space. Accountability, word count, encouragement, community, the 300 steps that go into publishing a book, and then marketing. Do review tours, podcast tours, all the things. Get your book out there, right?
Nice.
Get help and support where you need.
And you can help authors with all of those things. Can you tell us more about your website and connecting with you? And then after that, I have one more question for you at the end, Michelle.
Yeah. So, you're going to post all the links to the author path and how to go get the free workbook. You're going to post all that. I have a community on Facebook. We'll make sure we get you that right link. I give away tons of free content. I love sharing with authors and writers about how to come in. So connect with me on social or come into one of my free classes or join our email list, become a reviewer for us. All of these things will just help you be on the path, learn more, and it's what I do. It's my purpose, and so I love to connect. I do have paid programs, obviously, so if you're ready to go to the next step, I've got $200 a month program, and I've got a $20,000 program and everything in between, right, depending where you are. So something for everyone, and free stuff.
Nice. And I love it. And we'll have links to everything for everyone to connect with Michelle, because if you haven't got enough value from Michelle today, I don't know how you don't have enough value, because this was an amazing conversation. But there's way more by working with Michelle and her team. I would encourage you to go and check out all the links and make sure you connect with Michelle. Again, thank you so much for making time for me, Michelle, and for the audience on the podcast. It's great to have you here. I'm so excited to have you on. So my last question for you, if you could write any type of book that you want to under a ghostwritten name and no one knew it was you, something you've never done before but you're so curious about that you would write, what type of book would it be that you would write? Like what genre? And maybe just an idea about what the book would be about that would just be pure fun for you, just enjoyment that you would never write under your own name as an author. Anything come to mind?
Oh, what a wild and crazy question that is. So I've written about lots of nonfiction, creativity, writing, all those kinds of things. Even though I read a lot of fiction, I don't think I would write fiction. I think I would want to go explore, like, are ETs real, and like, were crop circles really done with the whatever that was called, the guys that stepped and put down, and what are the Inca lines? And I probably want to go explore all that supernatural stuff.
I would read that book. I would buy that book.
Yeah.
See, and I like when authors play. That's the one. That's the reason behind that question is that's a different part of your brain that you don't normally go to, right? So how do we unlock that part of our writing brain as well? So smart. I love it. Michelle, thank you so much for doing this. Again, I would love to connect with you again in the future and follow your journey as you help authors, and would love to have you come back in the future if that is ever possible. But again, for those people listening, go and connect with Michelle and her team. All the links are there for you. And I just want to encourage you, Michelle, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for supporting all the authors that come into your world. And I'm just wishing you many, many more successes as you pour into authors around the world. Thank you for doing what you do.
You as well. Thank you, David.
Hey, well, thank you for listening. It's a new year, and we're excited to be releasing even more great episodes of Living the Next Chapter, and we want you to come along for the journey. Thank you for being here. If you know of an author that you would love to have featured on the podcast, an author that you enjoy, an author that brings you that excitement that you would just love to hear them interviewed on this podcast, I would love to hear your suggestion for a future guest and what would be a question or two that you would want us to ask them on your behalf. Go to livinginthenextchapter.com. There's a little speak pipe icon there. You can leave me a voice message. Tell me who should be on the show and give me some question ideas. And I'll use your request and reach out to that author and invite them on and give you full credit for the idea. livingthenextchapter.com. Would love to hear your suggestion, and thank you for listening. Catch you on the next episode.
Hey there, fellow parent. If you're anything like me, balancing screen time for our kids is a constant struggle. That's why I want to share a little secret with you, KidsPod. It's this amazing app I found that's packed with podcasts just for kids. Imagine stories, learning, and fun, all without the screen. It's been a game changer in our house, keeping my kids engaged and their imaginations running wild. And guess what? It's completely free. So download KidsPod today. Trust me, it's a decision you won't regret.